Well, now, do you think that that is a real danger then today as this economy continues to deteriorate and Obama and his economic team keep throwing money at the banks and it doesn't work? At some point, as you've mentioned, there's got to be some sort of a political upheaval. What do you think the likelihood is that there would actually be a revolution from the right?
Well, we're seeing something like that in the post-Soviet Union. And in fact, if you want to see the plan that the neoliberals have for the United States, look at their dress rehearsal, not only in Chile, but in Russia after 1991, and especially after 1996, when Mr. Obama's current advisors, the Treasury Secretary, Summers, and Geithner, had a free hand in Russia. You had basically a right-wing revolution there, and in the last week in the post-Soviet economies, you've had revolutions in the streets from Latvia to the Ukraine. You already have a political crisis there that's bringing down the neoliberal governments. And now, in today's Wall Street Journal, for instance, you have the Journal virtually insisting that the U.S. and that Europe are willing to go to war with Russia over the Ukraine to prevent the Ukrainians deciding that they want to rejoin the Soviet Union now that Europe has bankrupted them. All throughout the post-Soviet economies, throughout Central Europe, they realize that they've been tricked. They've been lied to, that they believed that what they were being told was how Europe and North America were going to help their economies industrialize in the same way that Europe and America industrialized, by protecting their industry and by building up their manufacturing power and productive capacity. Instead, Europe especially, but also America, looked at these economies as victims to be looted, to be emptied out, and instead of rebuilding their industry, they tore down the factories, sold them for junk, and essentially set up foreign bank loans to lend in foreign currency to inflate their real estate prices and create a real estate bubble that took place without any domestic industrialization. Not only did they essentially steal the public domain through the kleptocrats selling hotels, natural resources to Western investors, but also these economies lost maybe 10% of their adult labor force between the ages of 25 and 35 to immigration, so that you had Latvian immigrants, Polish immigrants going to Ireland, going to England. Essentially, you had not only a brain drain, but also a drain of skilled labor from these countries to Europe. Well, now, all of a sudden, now that the Irish bubble and the British bubble are bursting, you're having the Latvians go back where they came from, and the Poles go back to where they came from, back to the farms where they're only able to support themselves in subsistence agriculture, so that the neoliberal alternative to Stalinist bureaucracy was neo-feudalism, subsistence production on the land, and when these people are now coming back, they say, we were lied to by the neoliberals. Europe has only been trying to exploit us. We want to now realign ourselves with Russia. You're having that in the eastern Ukraine especially, which is largely Russian-oriented. And you're having the Wall Street Journal say it's time for America to essentially go to war against Russia and Ukraine, but let's let our European proxies do that. You can't lose Ukraine to Russia. And so you're certainly having a showdown there. The government is in the process of collapsing. Nobody knows what's going to happen there. But it's like a grab bag, and essentially this has been not only a lost decade for the post-Soviet economies, but it's a decade that has left them very deeply in debt. The currency is plunging, and ironically, there's a blowback to Europe, because the Austrian banks, for instance, are threatened with bankruptcy by having lent real estate loans to the Hungarians that are now defaulting, just as they lost in the Kreditanstalt collapse in 1932 that helped trigger the Great Depression, just as the Rothschilds lost loans from Austria to Hungary in the 19th century. Meanwhile, the Swedish banks are faced with insolvency because they've made so many loans to the Baltics that are defaulting that they're endangered. Well, the European response is, let's give money to the Baltic countries, but now the Baltic countries are realizing that this is all a lie, that every single dollar, every single euro, and every Swiss franc that has been given nominally to the Baltic states has been given to them to repay the Swedish banks. Not a penny has been left in the Baltic states, and in fact, they say, we're giving you $10 billion or 10 billion euros to repay the Swedish banks, but now to pay us, you have to cut back your budgets. You have to lower your wage rates. Unfortunately, you're only taxing your labor a flat tax of 62% in Latvia. You have to tax labor more. You have to reduce living standards more. You have to squeeze the economy even more to pay the Swedish banks because we're here to screw you. Now, you can imagine why there are riots in Riga. You can imagine why the Prime Minister was thrown out of office. The Prime Minister that was trained in Georgetown University is the very first Prime Minister. The Prime Minister trained by American liberals, sent to Latvia to rip off the economy. That is essentially what's happening, and you're having all of Central Europe be engulfed in this discovery of what a rip-off neoliberalism has been. And at some point, that's going to spread to the rest of Europe that is now going insolvent because its banks actually played a role in all of this, and it's going to spread to the United States when we go through here exactly what the post-communist countries are going about.